Hi, I'm Taryn Almanzar, and on behalf of Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism, the Admissions and Financial Aid Office, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to spend the next few minutes learning about our data degree. With me, I have today Giannina Segnini, who is the director of the MS Data degree, and Matthew Albasi, who is a graduate and a postgraduate fellow here at the Journalism School. So just so that you know a little bit about what we will be covering in the next few minutes, we'll start off with what is data journalism, what is not, what is that it all encompasses. We'll talk a little bit about the program, the curriculum, and also what is the ideal student for that program. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to my panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your background, what led you to journalism, and what have you been up to the next few minutes.
Thank you, Taryn. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Sure, I've been working as an investigative journalist for the last 30 years, originally in Costa Rica, and then also joining cross-border collaborations and networks. So I got into data in the early 90s, and as a tool, when I discovered it as a powerful tool to improve my investigative journalism, and since then we've been working in different projects, such as developing the first ICIJ data platform for offshore leaks and Panama Papers, and now I joined the school back in 2014. First, designing a data concentration, and now as a director of the data journalism degree.
Okay, thank you, Giannina. Matthew, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Matthew. I'm from Philadelphia, and I was one of the graduates of the first data program here at Columbia. Before coming here, I was working in publishing in Philadelphia at a small local newspaper, and then I, sort of caught the bug and decided to come here. And while I was here, I've worked on a few projects with Giannina and with the Brown Institute and with the School of Policy, and now I'm working on Giannina's team as a postgraduate researcher, investigative journalist.
Oh, wow, thank you for that. So that's a nice segue to talk a little bit about what is data journalism. What is that field all about? Can you tell us what is it not?
Well, there's no simple answer. Actually, it could be anything for different people, but we do have a clear understanding of what we want to do here in the school. So, other programs are focused on data visualization or, developing platforms. We cover all of that, but the core of this program and the way we understand data journalism is, using data as a tool to find relevant stories. Data, it's at the service of journalism and not the other way around, and also it's not just data, it's also technology that opens doors for journalism, all kinds of journalism, and so what we do here is precisely exploring all those opportunities.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about your trajectory.
Sure.
What made you decide that data journalism was the route to go?
Yeah.
What did you see out there that said, this is what I need to focus on?
So, like I said before I was here, I was at a small local newspaper in Philadelphia, and we were minimal resources, it's just a few people in a room putting out a weekly print publication to some people. But we kept running into these issues where we would have, we've got a spreadsheet of data from the Environmental Protection Agency that shows us where all of the Superfund sites are in your neighborhood. We wanted to write a story about that because we thought our neighbors should know where the
Exactly.
And but we had no idea how to do that. We had the spreadsheet and we had Google Maps, so I ended up sitting there for about a week just placing pins by hand on a map so that I could take a picture of it and put it into a story. And I knew enough about computers to know that there had to be a better way to do that.
Yeah.
And so after we wrapped up the newspaper, I was sort of looking for what's next. And I just knew that was this massive hole in my news organization. I figured it had to be in other places. And so I started asking around, and it led me up to this program. And I found out that, there is.
That there is. So, that's I'm going to piggyback and ask one of the questions from our viewers. And the question is data journalism then is more so about analyzing large data sets of information to cover all topics? And how does that marry IT and the digital world?
Oh, well, one of the beauties about data is that you can apply, data journalism techniques to pretty much any topic, from sports, entertainment,
Right.
Investigative reporting, and anything. You can, so there's no limitation as to how to apply the skills that you learn as a data journalist. And I don't know, Matt, if you want to add something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had this misconception when I came here, because I really love that digital world, sort of how does technology influence us and surveillance state and all that. So when I came here, I think part of me hoped that this was going to be an introduction to that, and it was, but not in the way that I thought it was. It's what you're saying. I found out that, these tools that I'm using can be learned to report out stories about Facebook, which
Right.
I ended up working with SIPA on a story about Facebook, and it was, all the sort of digital stuff I was hoping for. But I also never realized that, the basic reporting that I was doing at the newspaper could have been so much better if I had these data skills. If I knew how to access public records in mass and how to analyze them, I would have been able to do more, like I said, basic reporting.
Yeah.
So it's a tool that can be used in all of these different ways. It's not just for digital,
Right.
Writing about digital stuff.
And there's another misconception about what people call big data.
Yes.
And so no, we don't need necessarily to analyze, massive volumes of data to come up with a really good story. I mean, that could be the case,
Right.
but not necessarily. And the same goes for the techniques. I mean, sometimes they're great stories nowadays that were done completely using Excel.
Right.
And, so the way I explain it to my students is, an engineer doesn't say, okay, I'm gonna build something because I want to use the new bulldozer that I just bought.
Right.
An engineer would come and design a building or a project, and then he would choose the tools that are required, to build that thing. So the same goes in this area. We conceive a story or are curious about things around us, and then we apply all these data skills and tools to get there.
I see. So then one would say that the core of journalism is still very much prevalent in the data degree. You need to start with what is the story, what is the good story, and then you're going to use data as one of the tools to tell that story. So that's one of the clarification, I think, that's key when you are, meaning our audience, are reviewing the program and are deciding if this is the right path, if this is the right one. You don't need a mathematic or
No.
computer science background
I
for
haven't
to
done
be a
it.
data journalist.
I haven't done math since I got here. so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Hasn't done any math since you got here.
Yeah. There's again misconceptions about I'm not a math genius or
Right.
I don't know anything about statistics or business. No, those three things. I mean, of course you're going to learn how to code,
Right.
but we start from scratch. So there's no need to have any background or proficiency in math or anything like that.
So let me ask you this. Then what makes a good data journalism story? If you can go on so many different routes, if you were to tell us maybe 2 or 3 things that you would
Yeah.
say, that's a data journalism
Well, definitely, it would be a story that finds something new and relevant, as any other journalistic
Yeah.
project. In data, I mean, sometimes you see that visualizations
Right.
with open questions and stuff. I mean, those are products that are important, but that's not necessarily what we think about when we talk about stories. We need to find something new and relevant on the public interest. And I would add also, most of the best data journalism stories, you can't tell how they use the data, but because they have good storytelling and they're not overloaded with the numbers and so it's not about that. It's still storytelling, and that's important. But of course, there's you can't see how the story was done. There's a whole motor behind the story, like as to use the data as, as a compass to find places, people, phenomena, trends.
Right.
But then when the time comes to write the story, you're still a journalist. I mean, and there's nothing different. We talk to people. There's a lot of context in the process of reporting a data journalism story. It's not, a gig person eating pizza in the office and not talking to people. It's totally the opposite. Like, we need to start talking to sources since the very first moment of a data story, and then continue to do so until the end. So this is in addition to all the good journalism that we know.
Right.
Now we have these tools that we can integrate fully and to do the same thing that we always did, which is finding good stories.
Right, and telling it. So let me piggyback on that. So we're in a newsroom, and he's an investigative reporter, and you are a data journalist. How do you work together, and how are your work, how's it, the output going to be different or slightly different? Or are they married? Like, how would you describe that? I guess what our viewers would like to know, it's once you go out there, what does a data journalist exactly?
What happens
next?
Okay, now I'm a data journalist. So what am I supposed to do?
Exactly?
Well, there are different models, depending on the here in New York, in the U.S., and around the world, because this is a practice that now is so spread.
Right.
So you can work as assistant journalist doing data analysis or data viz. Some of our students, for instance, are already working for organizations such as the Marshall Project, the Washington Post, ProPublica, and different outlets who have invested in data journalism. And so there are different roles. Some people like graphics and data viz more than the data analysis, and some others focus on that. Some small organizations have would hire you to do everything.
Right. From A to Z.
So that's another model.
Right.
And I think it's it all depends on the person and what they really want to do. I really, if I was considering applying to the school, I would be already thinking about how does a regular day looks like for me afterwards.
Exactly.
And then come up with that dream early, so that you focus not only in the degree and what it means for you as a career, but also the practice itself. What is it that I want, and to get there, you have to be curious and passionate about something. So that's one of the first things that we tell the students is, find a topic or something that you're really passionate about, that you're curious, that you want to learn more, so that it's, and we do, of course, the thesis and the master's project is an example that it has to have a data component. But in the process, it's really important to, and working as a team, because there's not such a thing as a perfect, all-in-one journalist. And so at some point, we will definitely need to work as teams.
No, that's absolutely great. So just to summarize, for those of you who are thinking of applying to the data degree, you do not need a mathematic background. You do not need to know any data visualization. What you have to have is this innate curiosity in wanting to use data. You will be out there reporting. You will be out there working with colleagues. Giannina touched upon having to have a vision of what it is that you want to do in order to make the most out of the program. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, if you will? Because I know you started in the small newsroom in Philadelphia, but once you started to apply to the program and you were in it, what was your thought process? What were you experiencing as you were going through it?
Yeah. So as I was applying, was accepting the admission.
Yeah.
I was sort of just being a journalist. I called up my friend Erin. I called up everybody I know who is even vaguely related to this, and just said, "Hey, have you heard about this? Do you know who this lady is? Is she?"
Right.
Just sort of going through the whole doing your due diligence.
Right.
And I'm sort of trying to. Sadly, we didn't, because we're the first class. We didn't really have anyone to go and ask what the program was like, so we just sort of had to go a little blind.
Right.
But so I think when I came in, God, in the first like month, I came into your office and I sat down with, I walked in with 10 like real loose, vaguely reported on ideas for my master's project,
Right.
you know, just sort of back of the envelope sketches. And I sat down and gave her the top 3, and she was like, well, that's not what we do. And that's, I don't know if
All
that
right.
one's the best, you know, application of your skills, but, you know, this one might be worth digging into. And that ended up being my a piece on cellular surveillance and sort of deploying these sensors out into the world.
Right.
But sorry, I'm getting off track.
No,
on the
no,
master's
this is
project.
Actually, it
perfect.
would be great if you talk about your
Yeah,
project.
sure.
No,
Yeah.
yes, talk about it. This is great.
So for my master's project, I wanted to look at stingrays, which are sort of cellular surveillance devices that used to be really prohibitively expensive. Like you could only buy them if you were the NYPD or U.S. government. And in recent years, have become very, very affordable. In fact, I built one for about $200.
Oh my.
And so I thought that maybe these were out in the wild more than we thought
Right.
that they were. So I worked with Mark Hansen at the Brown Institute and a few researchers from University of Washington at their privacy lab. And they had
As you were a
developed-
student. You
Yeah.
were working
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the center and with outside of the journalism school. So it's
Yep.
very much hands-on, real world.
Oh yeah, I'm you know every day on the phone with these PhD candidates in Washington talking about
Right.
their sensor as they build it, and then they're mailing me out packages, and we're
Oh my
putting them
God.
on the back of bike messengers so they can ride around the city and you know sort of just scoop up all of the data from the cell phone towers. And it was you know just this amazing, fun, big project, and it was one of the ones that like when I came in, I had no idea how to do it. I knew that it could be done. I knew like the general idea, it was newsworthy, there was something I could peg it to, blah, blah, blah. But when it came to like, how do I do it?
Right.
I don't know. But so it was great because then when I got here, I was able to sort of zero in and okay, well, I know these are the people who are great at sensors and have done work on it in the past. And so I reached out to them immediately. And that was Mark Hansen and Susan McGregor. And, you know, it sort of helped me narrow that in. And along the way, I get to meet these people who are actually working in the world in different sort of, whether it was journalists that I'm being introduced to through the classes or sources that Mark is introducing me to as I'm going and reporting on the story. And I sort of get to see the different ways that data journalism works like in real life. And that's where I finally got a sort of idea where I wanted to land, which is I think where I am now, this computer-assisted reporting, investigative work.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the postgraduate fellowship? Because we've had other data
Absolutely.
graduates be part of it and how that fits in, or it might be a route that people may want to explore.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that, but that people can find it online. I mean, we have in the spring the data students can have to take a data related class and another one seminar. So I teach one of those, the data related class or data driven classes, and it's called Using Data to Investigate Across Borders. And what we do is we work in collaboration with ICIJ, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalism, and OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. So we conceive, and this is 100% investigative, so we
Right.
conceive an investigative project that involves more than 2 countries or a region. And we start working on that. We've done stories about, for instance, mapping Donald Trump's business deals across the planet, and other stories relating to shipping. And over the last year and a half, we've been working on investigating issues that related to religion.
Oh, wow.
And currently, we're working on a project like compiling a data set from scratch and also extracting data from multiple documents. But so the project starts as part of the class usually, and then after graduation, we hire 3 the best candidates to, and we hire them for 9 months. 6 to 9 months, depending on the project, to work full-time investigating and working with partners around the world. So right now, last year we had 16 partners in
Oh, wow.
the U.S. and Latin America. Now we're
Yeah.
working with 10 different partners,
Right.
and so it's I would say a unique place to combine to apply all these data journalism skills that they already learned over the summer and the fall into something real, concrete, that's going to be
Right.
published and that has impact. So I would say it's a unique opportunity to work on projects, in-depth reporting and investigative reporting that probably is not as easy to get this opportunity after graduation right away.
Right.
So I don't know, Matt, if you want to add something about it.
I think you hit most of the points. I think my favorite, the best part about it for me is that I came in with, I had some journalism experience,
Yeah.
but I missed that part of my career where I was supposed to just be like a beat reporter for
Right.
5 years running around with a notebook. So I have had a little bit of hesitancy in the journalism, skill set. The data stuff I've taken to pretty well, but the journalism part has just been more difficult for me. And compared to, some of my classmates were, Diana was 10 years a journalist at
Yes.
the biggest newspaper in Mexico. So
Yes.
our skill sets when we walked in the front door were a little
Right.
imbalanced. But
So it's very diverse.
it's very diverse.
Oh, yeah.
We had
Yes.
we had one guy who walked right out of law school. I think he
Yes.
skipped law graduation to come to orientation day.
Oh my God.
We had
Exactly.
professional journalists like Adrian and Diana who were just amazing, and people like me who were interested and passionate but maybe not so learned on it. But what was I saying?
You were
The
to the-
postgrad.
Yes.
So because I didn't have that sort of foundation of reporting, this postgrad is great for me because it's a little bit like reporting on rails. Like I have
Right.
all the freedom to apply all of the skills that I spent the last year learning, but I also know that when I hit a wall, I just call Giannina. I come up to the office, or I can talk to somebody at the school, and it just gives this nice stopgap between work that I probably won't be able to do for another 5 years in my career, and work that I should have done already, or skills that I should have developed already. So it's been really, really helpful in that regard.
Plus, from
Yeah.
the experience of the previous generations, it's not just what we learn working together, and we're discovering something new. So that's super fun, and the international aspect of the program is also
Yes.
amazing. And again, it's kind of unique because there are not many places with this mentality or this mindset. But also, more importantly, the teamwork.
Yes.
So they learn from each other, the fellows, and from other fellows, because we have other fellowships here in the
Right.
school as well, and also from our partners. So we work, for instance, Matt is now working closely with one of our partners in the Latin American Center for Investigative Journalism,
Right.
developing some reporting tools and data analysis and extraction and processing. And so that opportunity of working with the top people in the world,
Yes.
and on real projects that are going to be
Right.
published and will have visibility, it's also a good thing because
Right.
something to add to your portfolio, and then after they leave, we're also very proud to see how they apply all the skills in different organizations.
Yes, and that's one of the fascinating things of the journalism school, which is somewhat small when you compare it to the other schools within Columbia, but it's very global in terms of, and very international, not only with the faculty, but the students, but also with the connections that we have to the greater atmosphere and global. We're reaching the end of our webinar. I know time
wow.
flies when you're having fun. This has been great. I would like to end this. If you had an advice for somebody who is watching us right now and who is thinking, A, is this the right time to go to journalism? And B, and if it is, should I pursue data journalism? What would be the advice? What should they be doing now?
Well, first of all, I would say they should start reading examples of good and bad data journalism stories to figure out, what's the outcome, what is it that we do. So
Right.
it's focus more on the kind of work and not necessarily in the career aspects, because that's going to be solved eventually, as we all
Right.
know, one way or the other. And data by the way, it's a good, I particularly don't like, I wouldn't make the decision of coming to data because this is the future. That's one of the things that I hear. No,
Right.
first of all, it's not the future, it's the present. And second, I mean, if you do a calculated move like this, probably you're not going to have fun because you have to go deep into something that you will have to do every day of your life.
Right.
So try to expose yourself as much as you can to a good place to go is IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editors, and they have so subscribing to IRE would be a good place to start reading about. And the good thing is that the pieces that they have come with what we call a nerd box, which is an explanation of the methodology applied and the resources that the journalists used to analyze the data, come up with the story. So it's a good place to start and figuring it out.
Right.
Is this something that I really want to do? Second, don't be afraid about the math myth.
Yes.
and don't get scared about words like algorithm because in the end it's something. It sounds like rocket science, but it's not really. So all these fears, try to think openly and obviously. Thinking about ideas for projects.
Yes.
That's the best way. You learn by doing. That's
Yes.
the only way you learn, really learn. So thinking about, every time you go and see screen and someone, entering data into a database, imagine, how this data is collected. What can I do with this data? Every aspect of real life could be subject for data collection or data analysis. So, exercising this mindset is also a good way to start. And talking to people.
And talking to people, right?
I mean, I think, going through the nerd box, finding a few data stories that you enjoy, going to ProPublica, BuzzFeed, one of these places that just has a great team like that, and finding either a journalist or a story that you really love and sort of dissecting it and figuring out how it works. For one, I mean, that is the work that we do in classes here.
Yes,
That is like how I learned how to do this stuff. But for two, it just sort of gives you a better idea of what the day-to-day is. So you can try it on, see how you feel. I'd say also go out and, there's so many great open data resources now, whether it's, New York City's open data, nyc.data.gov, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Or most cities across the country have them now. Just any sort of
exploration.
Try it. You know what I mean? Give it a try, and just put it into Excel and just do like the average and find what the highest number is and the lowest number, stuff like that. But I think that's really important and can sort of let you try it on.
And not just working with the data, but also thinking critically about the data. That's a good first step. And something that we also do in class is, evaluating data quality and understanding the context of the data. Because you cannot possibly analyze data if you don't understand, what's the context where the data is like an X-ray of a certain moment in reality, and so we need to understand what was happening with this data. What does it represent? So thinking critically about the data is as important as to learning new tricks or code. That part, some people ask also, do I need to go online and take one of these programming courses? Please don't.
Yes,
Actually don't, because we don't want people to take it. We start from scratch, so there's no need for anxiety, and it could be a bad idea, if you learned a bad way or.
And by that same token, I mean, there were a few people who came in with a lot of coding experience too, and they were, I know, just from talking to them, scared. I'm gonna be so bored for the first whatever, and no, you maybe are bored for like 2 days, if that, and then you're you're already over your head. What was the other thing? There was.
No, okay. I think this is great because what you guys have done is demystify what is data journalism. A, you don't need a mathematic background. B, it's everywhere. You can find data in your daily life. It's data that exists, data that you create, let that be through documents that you're analyzing, and that you're coming into an environment that is supportive, that you'll be working with a nice cohort of people, that you will complement each other in terms of their skill sets, in terms of the things that you want to put out there, that the employment is out there, that the need for great data journalism is out there. So it's very relevant. It's on your daily life. And as you can see, very approachable. So with that said, I would like to thank all of you for having taken the time to spend the last few minutes with us. This is not the end of the conversation. We will continue to have further webinars, information sessions. We'll also be putting out there a few Q&As with our graduates, with our current students, so that you can continue to have this window view into what is data journalism and what you can accomplish with it. So thank you, Giannina.
Thank you, Taryn.
No, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Yes, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.